It's actually this whole cohort of people that are just insane. I was told that the puberty blockers were reversible. The most obvious ones are my voice and the facial hair.
Is there a way to change that back?
My body almost felt like it was just going into complete shutdown, and then you have the genital issues as well. You know, such a disgusting ideology. Oh, so you're more masculine, so that makes you a male, or oh, you're more feminine, so that makes you a woman. From their side, there was no, hey, have you thought about this? Or it's a thing to strive for now, being a trans influencer.
They're influenced by the money.
I think it's quite sick.
Elon Musk has said that his son died.
It is a death in a way. Yeah, you're happy, but for how long?
Tell me a bit about your story.
Yeah, so growing up, I was very typical classical sort of tomboy. And I suppose it just all went downhill once I hit puberty, and was struggling with the changes, and eventually struggling with my sexual feelings towards other girls. And I eventually came across the idea of, at the time, transsexualism, and kind of decided that that was what I needed to do in a way to, in order to become happy, I guess, in order to move on. And I'd say when I reached about 22, so I started puberty blockers when I was 16, testosterone when I was 17, and then when I was 22, I decided to stop the testosterone, and just kind of came to the conclusion that everything about it was BS, and it wasn't helping me in any way, and it was quite destructive. So since then, I've just kind of been speaking out and trying to make people aware of the situation.
How would you say you present now to people?
Just as me, really. Trying to, I guess, in a way, kind of I suppose bring out that part of me that was always there, and just that natural side of myself, just kind of bring that out, and not have to. I suppose what I'm trying to say is a lot of people, especially in my situation, they tend to kind of suppress their masculinity in order to appear as a woman again, and that sort of thing. And I think I'm at that stage now where I just kind of let things flow, and I'm not trying to prove that I'm a woman, because I know that I'm a woman. And just try and live authentically. I know that term's been ruined now, but that is kind of, in a true sense.
That seems like a healthy attitude. You're just going with it. But there are irreversible changes, aren't there? What kinds of things? And were you told that this would be reversible, or did you think it would be?
I was told that the puberty blockers were reversible. As far as the testosterone and the more obvious physical changes, I wasn't really told about what would be reversible, or even an extensive list of the effects that I would experience. I don't think that was really in the scope of their thinking at that time, of someone might actually regret this. But yeah, the physical changes, I mean, the most obvious ones are my voice and the facial hair, and those are the most obvious.
Is there a way to change that back?
The hair, I mean, you can go through procedures such as laser hair removal or electrolysis. It's debatable whether laser hair removal is permanent or not, but those are things you can do. I'm not so sure about the voice. I think there are kind of newer methods to kind of lighten someone's voice and with the vocal cords and stuff like that, but I'm not too sure.
Is that something that trans women, so men who want to present as women, can do? I mean, what do they do? Do they take estrogen or something?
I'm not too sure, to be honest. I think yeah, they will take estrogen for sure, but as far as lightening their voice, I think they mostly do voice training, which is kind of almost like a singer would do to kind of reach a higher register, and yeah, those hair removal procedures as well. Yeah.
What did it feel like to first feel that you weren't just a girl who was attracted to other girls, but you were a boy? Can you take me through the moments of realizing, hey, I'm actually not a girl, I'm a boy?
Well, I think I was always disgusted with my body ever since puberty sort of hit, and I think that definitely made me feel a bit. It put me in that confusion of, oh, this doesn't feel right, and I just didn't like looking feminine, and I think also there was a bit of internalized homophobia mixed in that because the girls I liked, they were into boys and I was trying to look more like them, I guess, in a way as well. But yeah, I just didn't like my body anyway, and I think I just had sign after sign after sign that, oh, I'm actually a boy, but really it was just just I think what a lot of lesbians experience is just discomfort with your body and how you're perceived in society.
When I spoke to Peter Tatchell, who's a sort of trans rights activist recently, he said that there's nobody transitioning because of internalized homophobia, that there's no homophobia, it's nothing to do with it. What would you say to someone like that?
Um, that's just it's just not true, or it's obviously not true. Sounds like he's in a state of denial, and I think a lot of the community within the kind of gender ideology or gender care movement are in denial about a lot of this.
Do you think, I suppose they've gone so far that to now pull back would be to admit that they've done quite awful things to people?
Absolutely, yeah, I think that's the case.
And so take me through the first steps then. So you felt this way. Did you see a therapist? What was the deal?
So I saw someone at CAMS first, or CAMH, not sure how you say that, the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service. So I saw, I was referred by a GP to them in the first instance, saw them for maybe like a couple months, and then I was referred on to the gender identity clinic, the adolescent.
And what were the kinds of conversations there they were having with you?
I remember them just being very basic, just asking, hey, who were the sorts of who were your peers in school, and what sort of hobbies do you like? Do you like to play football? And just kind of very, very basic in that sense.
That's so basic.
Yeah.
So again,
that's all I remember.
The suggestion here is that if you like to play football, you're less likely to be a boy.
Yes.
It's so old-fashioned, isn't it?
It is. It really is, yeah.
How can they not see this? I mean, did you get really frustrated and angry thinking about that side of things?
I have now, yeah, for sure. It's just so reductive, and these were adults at the time, and it's quite baffling in that sense. But I think at the time they were operating off of the really old model as well, so it was kind of in that transitional period, no pun intended. The older kind of transsexual models, it was kind of it's still basic now, but basic in the sense of, oh, so you're more masculine, so that makes you a male, or, oh, you're more feminine, so that makes you a woman. Whereas now it's just, oh, how do you identify? And so it's even worse in a way, but it's never made any sense.
It was like a checklist then of like, these are the things you like to do. This sounds like, rather than just being a woman who wants to live her life doing those things and having individual liberty, this means you're in the wrong body.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then were you encouraged, or was it you pushing to start changing things?
I think I was definitely pushing at the time, and I've never made that a secret. I was very adamant I wanted to go down that path. It's just there was absolutely no from their side, there was no, hey, have you thought about this, or just what you would expect someone in that position to do, like a therapist or even a psychologist. I was seen by a social worker, I believe, for the most part. So there was just no, I say pushback, but more so just I wasn't given a broader idea of what things meant, I guess. Yeah.
What are puberty blockers exactly, and how do they feel to start taking them?
They feel horrible. I just went into my body almost felt like it was just going into complete shutdown. I was depressed, had menopausal symptoms, things
what
like,
are they?
Like night sweats, hot flushes, brain fog, and then you have the genital issues as well that come with it. I was in sixth form at the time, which I failed. But yeah, it was a horrible time. I just couldn't concentrate.
Yeah. How could you not fail with all of that going through you?
Yeah, it definitely didn't help. That's for sure.
Gosh, what are the effects on the genitalia with the puberty blockers?
Well, from what I remember, you're a lot drier, and I think that was the start of the atrophy as well, because you have absolutely no hormones in your system, and that's the other thing. They call them puberty blockers, but they are. I think Dr. David Bell has kind of made the point of this, is they're more so hormone blockers. They just block all of your hormones, so kind of shuts everything down. And yeah, so it was a massive kind of combination of symptoms I was having. That just none of them were enjoyable.
What is the atrophy? Atrophy being sort of wasting away of organs and things.
Well, vaginal atrophy, yeah. So it would be like the vaginal walls thinning and becoming more brittle, and you're drier. Yeah, it's that.
It's uncomfortable, I imagine.
Oh, for sure.
Bloody hell! And then, and are they? Because I know there's been a lot of debate about it. Are they actually reversible? Are there long-term effects for children taking those today?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I know that there's no hard evidence out at the moment, but it does indicate that children can end up with sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. The bone kind of deterioration, osteoporosis, I think it's called.
I've heard that, yeah. So those parts are irreversible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yet we're being told that it's just fine, and it just delays puberty a little bit, which is just so much meddling anyway.
Yeah, no, it's serious. Yeah.
What is the difference between them and cross-sex hormones?
So cross-sex hormones would be introducing the primary sex hormones of the opposite sex, and so I would say that they have less effect on a biological man taking estrogen, for example, because they've already had testosterone in their system and they've kind of grown into that. Whereas with women or girls who take testosterone, the effects are so strong. When you're taking a male level of artificial testosterone, essentially, I mean, we pass a lot, they say. I suppose it depends on the person, of course, but we tend to pass a lot easier because the beard comes in, the voice drops, muscle mass. There's that argument that women are often perceived as men just by wearing a hat and trousers sometimes, but yeah, it definitely increases that. It makes you look, for the most part, like a man.
That's really interesting about passing, because I suppose there's less contention around women transitioning to look like men, because firstly they pass, and secondly we don't have that issue of, are they going to be abusing the men in the other changing rooms or whatever it might be.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that power dynamic still exists, just in a kind of warped way, I guess.
So people seem to be more okay with it. But then, so what do you inject, or how do you take these hormones?
So you can get a gel, I think. I think the main two methods are gel and injections.
You rub it on you?
Yeah, you just rub it kind of on your shoulder usually, or you're on your thigh. Just kind of leave it to dry. I don't think you can touch anyone afterwards for a while, like half an hour to an hour afterwards. It's contaminant. But yeah, I had the injections, and they were pretty. I mean, I wouldn't say brutal, but can definitely cause scarring and stuff like that.
Right. And how often were you getting those?
So I started. I think it was every few weeks initially, and then it became, I think I switched the type because I was getting abdominal cramps. So I switched over to a different type that was every month, or maybe even every 6 weeks, something like that.
Okay. Were you excited?
When initially starting it, yeah, I'd say, yeah, for sure. It was kind of anticlimactic because I was expecting maybe, or I'd wanted it for so long, and then when you get that first injection, it's like, oh, I've still got to wait, however long for changes to kick in. So
how long did that take? You didn't notice like a difference in your voice the next day then?
No. I'd say it didn't take long though. It was probably within that first few weeks, or maybe over the 6 weeks. I can't really remember, to be honest, but it was within weeks. Yeah.
And at first, for how long was that making you happier, or was it making you happier at first?
Yeah, I would say so. It was obfuscating everything else going on in my life, and that's, I suppose, that gave the illusion of happiness. So I'd say, yeah, I'd say probably up until a couple months before I decided to detransition, or maybe after the surgery. So I had a double mastectomy when I was 20. I believe I was 20, and yeah, maybe the year coming up to me deciding to stop, it was kind of starting to diminish, or that feeling.
Interesting. So when you were getting the mastectomy, were you was there any part of you going, "Gosh, am I sure I should do this?"
A little bit, yeah. Before, just before, I would say, and I was starting to wonder, like, damn, like, do I really need to go this far? I think, my brain was maturing at that time as well. I think there was things were starting to open up a bit in my mind, I think, and so yeah, I did have that slight doubt, but I was like, I've gone this far now. I have a beard. My voice is, I couldn't see another option at that time, I guess. And the binder that had been hurting me, and I'd been wearing that since I was like 15, 16, like pretty much every day. So I wanted to get rid of that, and it affects the appearance of your breasts as well. So it's just, by that point, there just wasn't, in my mind at that time, another option. But little did I know, maybe like a year later, I decided to stop, or it might have been less than a year. But yeah.
And you wished you hadn't done the mastectomy.
Well, I try not to harp too much on things now. If you asked me that like maybe a couple years ago, I might have said, yeah, like I regret all of this deeply. But I try to look forward now and say, hey, it's happened, just as everything else in my life has happened, and I just try to deal with it, how things are now. But I feel like I'm, getting to a better place in my mind. So I don't try to harp too much on what happened and regret and that sort of thing.
With regards to the binding and stuff, had you been watching films like Boys Don't Cry? Did you ever see that, Hilary Swank?
I think I saw that after I'd already, because I met one person who was going through it at the same time as me, and they showed me that film. But I was never into that sort of thing. I think all the content that I got was mostly from YouTube.
Right.
I wasn't really on any other social media platforms, or I liked reading internet forums at the time and stuff like that. So that was where I got most of the content from. Yeah.
Because I remember watching that film. I was really young. I must have been like 13 or something. And
right.
I just thought it was beautiful at the, and what a sad thing for this person. And I think it was based on a real person. And it is very sad what happened to them.
Absolutely.
But I now look at it, and given the way we've moved as a society, and I feel like, oh gosh, that kind of thing is sort of brainwashing teenagers and you mentioned YouTube as well. Are there a lot of influencers out there who are maybe inadvertently or deliberately brainwashing teenagers?
I would say so. Yeah, I definitely believe so. I mean, at the time when I was on YouTube, it was a bit different. Things weren't monetized. Sorry, not when I was on it, but when I was, watching it at the time, things weren't monetized, and so there was no incentive to like, I don't know, I guess, exaggerate on things and make money. So it's a bit different at that time. But yeah, now I definitely think it's probably since like 2015 sort of time. That might have been a time things became monetized, but since then it's just completely exploded, and people are kind of it's a thing to strive for now, being a trans influencer and that sort of thing. So it's I think it's quite sick personally, but I guess they see it as, oh, I'm just sharing my story, and this is beautiful and people need to hear it, and I don't want another person to go through what I went through when I was younger, and that sort of thing. But it's I don't agree with it.
That's really interesting, because I often think there's nothing that can incentivize people to do things as much as ideology, right? So there were these trans influencers you were watching before, even when it wasn't monetized. But you think that nowadays, since it's been monetized, some of these people are doing it they're influenced by the money, and they're going in and getting other kids to change.
Absolutely, yeah, I think so.
Wow.
I don't know if it's so clear cut as that, but definitely, subconsciously people are wanting to make money from this. And how do you make money from it? Well, I guess um you bring people in and broaden the community, as they'd see it. So
because people will be watching this who've got their own kids and who obviously have YouTube, and it's so difficult being a parent. I can imagine now what's out there online in every space is scary, and they might be watching YouTube. I mean, who are some of the influencers to be wary of? I mean, there's like ContraPoints is probably the most famous one. There's one called Jammy Dodger, I think.
Yeah, I don't really know too many of them, especially those that are active now. And I did see a couple of them sort of crossed my like timeline or whatever on Twitter or whatever, that definitely tried to call me out at the time. And again, that makes them money. Keira Bell's in the news, let me hop on this and make a diss video.
How does that feel when you see those?
It's just they say the same thing over and over again. They kind of repeat the same thing and act as if I don't know all of that. Like I didn't come into this hearing all of the kind of tropes that they say and that sort of thing. So none of it fazed me. It's just hearing the same old thing, but I'm a big villain apparently. So
in their community, you're a villain because I suppose you're the worst kind of villain. A bit like in a religion, somebody who's turned atheist. Those are the worst people.
I've been called a traitor. All of that good stuff. So it's I mean, I see that as a badge of honor, to be honest, being a traitor of such a disgusting ideology that's reaping off of mental illness and disturbed individuals that are trying to find a way out of their mental torment, I guess. And so it's just the same old stuff.
You're a heretic. That's what I think.
An
apostate. What is it you call it disgusting? What is so disgusting about the ideology?
Like I said, I think it's because they're profiting off of I suppose that gets into a different realm as far as profiting off of, but I suppose it's the sense of they're all kind of pulling each other down is the way I see it. It's hey, I feel this way. Hey, I feel this way too. Yeah, let's do the worst thing possible and pretend that this is a loving. I suppose it's the deceit. It's the deceit part of it that really makes my stomach turn. And people are lying to themselves and hurting other people in the process. So there's a lot of that sort of thing that, really, it does sicken me. Yeah.
Some people, I mean, the other side would say, and these are the tropes that you're probably talking about, that it makes a lot of people happier that they live as adults, as the other sex, if that were possible, but happier, and that you're a very rare exception, and that even you don't seem, as you say, you have a positive outlook now. So what would you say to that?
Say to what? Sorry,
those who say, well, hang on, loads of trans people have transitioned and they seem happy, and you don't even seem now that negative about it. What's the problem? Is what they might say to you.
Oh, well, moving forward, I mean, I can't just stay in a traumatic state for the rest of my life. I mean, what do you want me to do? It doesn't change how I feel about what happened and the corruption at these clinics, and I shouldn't have gone down that path. No, I shouldn't have. But adults that are happy now, I mean, who knows? I mean, I was happy during my transition. I would sit here and tell you, I'm really happy right now. Yeah, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. I might not be that extreme, but something along those lines. And so it's quite fickle when people say that. It's like, yeah, you're happy, but for how long is the question? And I'm not here to say, in the next 5 years you'll detransition. I'm not here to say that, but I'm just saying that it's time dependent with a lot of people.
Is it fair to say it's something of a placebo? I mean, you mentioned before that it sort of took you away from different troubles you had.
Yeah, I think it can be for some people, or for most people, perhaps. Yeah, it definitely was for me. I'd imagine there's a million reasons sometimes why people continue on with it, even despite having health issues or even having doubts, just on from an ideological perspective. But yeah, I do think that's the case for a lot of people. Is like that.
Placebo, and you feel a bit better after.
Mm,
Are there? Have you seen links between? I'm thinking of the kind of age that you were,
mm,
teenage girl.
yeah.
There's a lot of mental health issues going on with a lot of young girls,
Mhm.
anorexia, disorders, and all those kinds of things. Do
Yeah.
you think there's a link between all of those?
Yeah, definitely. All kinds of mental health issues. I mean, I can't really speak on that because I didn't experience that, um, but I think, again, since this new kind of era of transition and people that are doing it, I feel like there are different reasons now. So before it was more of a cut and dry, like, oh, I'm more masculine, so surely that makes me a man. Now it's kind of, I hate my body, I've cut myself to pieces, and this kind of shows that I'm a man, and it's not really, it doesn't even have any basis to, oh, I actually, like, there's no relation to being a male in any way, if that makes sense. It's more about, I just hate myself, and that's it. It's not, I want to look like this, or I have these interests and I fit in better with the men around me. I think a lot of these girls don't even have male friends, and they're chronically online as well. And I have been at times, but yeah, I think it's a different thing going on now.
Would that account for the explosion in recent years of so many more young girls, teenagers going for transition?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, because anyone can say they're trans now. It's oh, I like having my hair short, so that makes me a man. Or, since the definition has broadened, more people will be caught up in that, obviously. So yeah, I think that's what's happened.
And girls hating their bodies, and why do you think that is? Why do so many girls in our society seem to hate themselves and their bodies?
I think that is probably a long-winded question, but you could say the obvious things, such as, being looked at by men and things like that, makes you want to kind of revert inwards. And I think sexual abuse and traumatic experiences like that, I think, can really make you not want to be in your body. Yeah, I think that's.
Did you have any such traumatic experiences?
I had something in that sphere. I don't really want to get into that really, but I did have something like that happen. Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think, without going into it, do you think that had an effect on where you went next?
I think, yeah, it definitely contributed, as I guess everything else did in my life. I think it made me. It's definitely affected my relationships, like romantic or sexual relationships, and I'm sure it did have an effect on how I saw my body. But I think it's mostly it mostly was the internalized homophobia, because I did want to. I wanted to fit with a woman, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, I suppose I have this thing of you're not really fitting, and that was kind of how I perceived being a lesbian. It's just like, oh, but then that people will consider that the beautiful part of it. But I think that was what I was struggling with. But I think the kind of that traumatic experience I had when I was younger, I think that it definitely contributed in some way. And I think I'm still trying to unpack it all. I don't, but then I don't think it ever will be fully unpacked. I think it's just in the sense that there was just so much stuff happening when I was a kid. It's just kind of hard to untangle all of that and say, oh, this happened because of that, or this happened because of that. But one thing I can say for sure is that the whole transition process definitely has affected things in a very obvious way. and you can't revert from that. So
The reason I asked about the abuse, though, is because, I mean, I had this recent interview with Peter Tatchell, the trans rights activist, and I couldn't really ask him about his previous comments because he asked that I give him all the questions beforehand, and there's no way he'd have come on the show. But he's one of a group of far left activists who have, particularly, I guess, 10, 20, 30 years ago, that was really big, this idea of like adults and children, and that's fine. And they've seemed to have all spoken to these people who have grown up and been fine despite what happened to them as children. But everyone I've spoken to has said, who's suffered abuse of that kind, has said it's completely, it's made they're a different person. It's almost like the, you know, before and after, and it's completely changed the course of their life, and it's the worst thing that can happen to a child. Yeah,
I mean, you've got to be a monster to say anything else. Sorry to sound so extreme, but you really do. You've got to be a monster to say that that's a natural or beautiful thing to happen when it's, again, just like the whole trans thing, it's just obviously not. It's obvious.
Yeah, it's almost like an easy stick to beat the far left with, but it's just simply true that over the years in various societies, the extreme ends of it have pushed for that, which we know is disgusting and the worst thing that you can do. And well, anyway, and how did and we haven't mentioned, you know, your family, how did they respond to your wishes as a teenager?
My dad wasn't having it. My dad's a Christian Black American man. He wasn't down for that at all. My mother, she, for example, growing up, she was very, she allowed me to kind of run about in boys' clothes and play football, not a problem. Oh, she's a tomboy. But then there was this element, oh, she'll grow out of it. And when I didn't grow out of that, there were questions like, are you a lesbian? Do you want to be a boy? So I got those questions directed at me. And I think my mum, that was kind of the last of it. And I went through transition, and I wasn't living with my mother at the time, or by the time I went through it. And I've not really seen her since. She has substance abuse issues, and I've not spoken to her in many years. But I don't think she's caught up in that to even care about what's going on with me.
That must be tough.
It's kind of normal though, in the sense that it's normal in my life, and just it's not been an unexpected thing. She's always had those issues, our relationship has always been broken, and so that's my mother. And my father, the relationship with my father's always been broken to a large degree as well, but he wasn't really down for it either. So I did this alone, really. I didn't have any familial support around me, really.
Do you think some of you talk of internalized homophobia, and with a religious father in that sense, do you think that might be a part of it, trying to make everything fit?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it as well. And this is what I mean, is like, there's so many factors I feel that have contributed to all of this. But yeah, I definitely think growing up and hearing my father make certain comments, should I say, it's probably an understatement, about gay people. I'm sure that's had an effect as well. And that feeling that being attracted to girls, or, you know, women now, are is something about is wrong, and that something's wrong with me, and something's wrong about that attraction. So there's many elements to all of this, really.
You grew up then in what you describe, I think, is especially for a lesbian, a very difficult childhood. A mother with substance abuse, a religious father who wouldn't accept it, and then, I mean, firstly, you're remarkably well-rounded and easy to talk to, and you seem great. So that's a credit to you, I think. But also, the doctors then were the people that were supposed to look around the next corner for you, and they let you down, right?
Yeah. I mean, I do feel like there has been a pattern in my life of being let down consistently. Um, not to, I don't see myself as a victim anymore, but that definitely has been a pattern, and I think that has enraged me to the point of, for example, wanting to take the case, join the case with Sue Evans, and and yeah, I just wanted to do something about it because I do hate that. I hate when people are taken advantage of, and I knew that it wasn't just me. Um, so yeah, yeah, that feeling of being let down consistently definitely kicked something off, I think.
Yeah. I don't want people to keep letting you down and keep letting people like you down. It's really deeply upsetting. This was the Tavistock Clinic that you took to court. So for those outside the UK, what is the Tavistock Clinic?
So I believe the Tavistock Clinic itself it's a kind of broad mental health institution that kind of caters to many people, whether they're adults or children. But within that, they have something called I believe it's still called the Gender Identity Development Service, or I think at the time when I went, it was Gender Identity Disorder Clinic or Service or something like that. So yeah, so they treat children under 17, I think, who believe that they're a different gender or the opposite sex, and yeah, they've been around. I don't think it's been that long, but since I believe 2012, when I kind of went, that's when things exploded, and you were seeing the cohort change from predominantly boys to girls, and yeah, during that time or since then, a lot of girls have kind of a lot of girls and boys, but predominantly girls, have been caught up in the system and moved on to cross-sex hormones and surgery.
Man, how did the court case go? What was it? What were you sort of suing for?
Yes, so it was a judicial review, and that was to challenge the idea that under 18s could consent to these procedures, and we won at the High Court. The judges pretty much just said flat out, like, this is crazy what you're doing, and it was overturned on appeal based on a point of law, which is that my lawyer should be here really to describe that clearly, but it was essentially, they didn't the courts decided, this is going to be way too much for us to deal with. This should be the responsibility should be with the doctors, and they should see this as a warning, essentially, and people that have felt harmed by this should take their own medical negligence cases. So that was the result of the appeal.
I see. Did it implement changes then in Tavistock at that time?
See, this was something that wasn't really, I don't feel like that was really fed back to me properly, but I believe that they definitely halted it for a while. And then there was some sort of case within the family courts with, I forgot the guy's name, Jolyon Moore or whatever his name is. And he went into the family courts and kind of made some sort of arrangement there, and then the puberty blockers were prescribed again. But I think as it stands, they've been, well, the government has actually stepped in and said,
no more puberty blockers.
Yeah, no more puberty blockers. So it got there in the end. But yeah, I'm very glad I joined that case, because it and became the face of it, I guess, because it's blown everything out of the water, blown all the BS out of the water. So yeah, I'm definitely glad that I took the case.
Does that give you some sense of purpose, that you were able to use what happened to you to try and help others?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that was kind of why I went into it as well, because I knew it wasn't just me; it was happening on a wider level, and I was the ideology started to creep in, and I was like, what the hell's going on, sort of thing, and then when everything started to unravel, I was like, this has been happening, and this has been happening to everyone. And yeah, again, it's that thing of injustice and being taken advantage of, and yeah, just kind of flicked a switch, and I needed to do something. I'd already spoken out briefly before the case or before I joined the case. So I was kind of looking for an outlet, I think, and looking for a space to share my story and kind of make it known what's actually happening on a wider scale. So yeah, I was just very fortunate that case did come along, and I was able to bring awareness to people like me.
Because otherwise you just feel gagged, and it must be, I mean, is it infuriating to see some of the sort of pride celebrations around the whole trans thing when you know what that's done to you?
Yeah, and things like the progressive flag and what that kind of stands for. It is very irritating. But the other thing I've kind of come to discover is that I think a lot of people in the gay community, shall we say, that call themselves queer now, but softly call themselves queer, I think a lot of them, they just kind of go with it. Like I've started to realize how many people just aren't aware, like even within the gay community, they aren't aware of what's happening. Because I've been in these spaces since, and speaking to these people, they're just like, oh, I didn't, I had no idea that was happening, and I just use queer because I guess that's what we go with now. And so I think, yeah, there's this misconception that it's everyone. If you are waving a progressive flag, then that means you're like a diehard, like TRA. But I think that's not the case. People are just going with the flow, unfortunately. But yeah, I think over time people will become more and more aware, and I think already support is dropping for the ideology and people that are following it, and
which they use to say that there's more transphobia. I keep hearing people say, the people, the stats show that people are now against trans. And it's like, but before you started forcing us to allow people of the different sex into different toilets and prisons and sports teams, and before you said trans women literally are women, which we know isn't true, it was higher, the support for trans people, because no one cared. Obviously, some people did care. There are real people who don't like difference and don't like whatever, but I don't remember caring once in my life. I met loads of trans people in bars, and I don't know what bars I was going to, but I remember over the years I have met trans people, and it just didn't even cross. I just don't. Who cares? That's a person who's doing their thing.
Yeah, they have brought it on themselves, and that's the thing. I do feel bad for transsexual people who are just trying to live their lives as adults, and now they're going to be perceived, the ones that aren't extreme, they are going to be perceived as extreme, and you must believe this, but it's actually this whole cohort of people that are just insane, that have just come in and hijacked everything. So
also you can see how, if you're a trans person and more you're hearing that there seems to be transphobia everywhere, and then you're hearing from your fellow trans people, but we should be allowed in the toilets, and it's going to start to affect you. You're going to start to feel like a victim in that sense.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So it's it's just this cycle, this
ideology,
bad cycle.
Just going mad, and the flags and the words, as you say, like queer, for example, coming back in to incorporate all of that, and as you say, people don't even realize what they're subscribing to, really.
No.
So take me back to when you're about 20 then. You've had the mastectomy, you've had the, am I pronouncing that right? Mastectomy.
Yeah.
It's a strange word. I suppose it's Greek or something. Yeah. People keep saying mastectomy, which because of the, is that vasectomy?
It does have a T in it. Maybe I'm over pronouncing the T.
No, people I think people underpronounce it. Okay. I think you've got it right. It's like there's whole debates on other. I've seen it in the comments. Don't you mean mastectomy? And people, it's like, all right, it doesn't matter. We know what everyone means. Anyway. But okay, so you've had that. You had the puberty blockers and the cross-sex hormones by this point, and that was the year in which you started to move away from that ideology. So what's going through your mind?
I think I've kind of mentioned it before, but I think like the beginning of all of that was, for example, I attended like this youth LGBT, I don't know what they called it at the time, QIA plus or whatever group, or LGBT plus group. And firstly, there was a couple of people within that group that kind of seemed a bit off, just like they shouldn't be there, like, not to sound rude, but that they should perhaps be in some sort of institution, because it was a bit alarming.
What kinds
And
of things were they doing?
I think I remember one of them. She would say, "Oh, I feel like a boy now," and kind of every kind of 5 minutes, kind of like
Fucking
swap back
hell.
and forth, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it was a bit concerning, and I don't know, I started to feel really normal suddenly. I was like, oh, like what's going on? But after kind of attending that, I didn't go back. And they also did the whole thing of, oh, we're all going to sit around the table now, and you say your pronouns. And I'm like, I don't want to say my pronouns. I don't want to out myself. Like, you see what I've done. Like, it's quite obvious, I thought. But I think that was the sense that things were changing. Like,
You felt, I obviously look like a boy.
yeah,
Why do I have to do
yeah,
this struggle session, this kind of Bolshevik Soviet?
yeah,
I am this, and if I don't say the right thing, I'm out.
yeah, yeah. Like, and even I understood at that time as well that if you want to be perceived as something, you got to like kind of do the work to kind of look that way as well. So yeah, it was just weird all the way around. And after I didn't go back, they kind of sent me an email saying, hey, the Self ID Act is coming in, and you all need to sign this. And like, it was just kind of a given, like we all wanted to sign it. I think that was the first time I saw that all of this was coming into law. And
What is self-ID for people who don't know?
so it just kind of means that in the law, it would mean that you can just decide tomorrow that your name might be Nancy, and you want to be called Clive tomorrow, and you're a male, and you can be recognized as a male in law. I can't remember if they were kind of lessening the price of the GRC in order to become legally the opposite sex, or if it was just you can just sign a paper. But either way, it was quite extreme. And so yeah, that was being proposed. Fortunately, it didn't get in, but yeah, that was the first time it kind of I became aware that was happening in law, and this people actually believed this, and apparently this youth group thought that was a thing to do, and everyone agrees. And so so yeah, it was all kind of that side of things was all new to me. But I've forgotten what the initial question was now.
Yeah, that's interesting though, because so would that suggest then that for you it was always about, I want to be seen as a boy and live my life that way, but I don't actually believe I genuinely am a man?
No, I definitely didn't initially, but I think I never thought I am a boy, but I definitely did start to think, in the community, they call it true scum, I guess, where you, you believe that you have some sort of medical condition, or like, that's kind of abstract, I guess, but you could like someone within that community could believe that they have a congenital sort of condition that has made them kind of, it's altered something to the point where it's kind of almost like you are like almost like intersex or something, or that you should that you are a boy in some way, but something went wrong in the process. So that sort of thing. And so yeah, it was more so that it was kind of like, oh, something might have just misfired or something, and like, but I was always aware and never denied that I was biologically female. And I think that was part of the reason I was very isolated at that time. Throughout my whole transition, I was very socially isolated, because I felt like I was lying by not telling someone my birth sex, and I didn't really want to. Didn't want to tell them that. So yeah, so I was just in this weird state, I think. But yeah, initially it was very much like, I want to be a boy and I want to live that life.
Okay.
But yeah, I think as time went on, don't know, I must have seen something somewhere. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And, it kind of fit a bit better.
Did you go back to doctors and say, hey, I regret this?
I went to my GP, who had nothing to do with the initial process. I kind of moved by then. And I think she kind of freaked out in a way, and kind of was like, oh, I can't, as a lot of GPs do, just like, this is not my remit. Let me write to the clinic and say that this is happening. Excuse me. So that was how the clinic found out. And And I did go back to see them like a month or two after that, and just kind of said to them, yeah, like this was the adult clinic, obviously, and just kind of said, yeah, I don't think this is wrong. I don't think I was able to consent to this. I regret this, this, and this. But then they came back with a letter saying, oh, Keira, or they might have even insisted on calling me my trans name at the time and calling me he, or it might have been, it was either that or they tried to insist that I was non-binary and I'm just on a gender journey.
They said that
And
to you?
well, they said that in the letter. Yeah.
It's just nonsense.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They don't want to admit that there was any wrongdoing, and yeah, I'm just on a gender journey apparently. Just found out that testosterone wasn't for me, and there's nothing to see here.
Continue your gender journey elsewhere.
Yes.
See, this is, and I'm not going to go into it too much, but I've compared, because I've done this. I do this every interview now. But I've compared it to exorcism, because I saw an exorcist for an interview ages ago, and saw all the people that went to see him, and it was mostly teenage girls going through probably with the similar kind of thing, hating themselves, their bodies, and something was wrong inside, and so they saw an exorcist. But often when people came back to The Exorcist a year later or 2 years later and said, actually, this hasn't worked for me, he would lash out, obviously in a way that a doctor probably couldn't do, but he's less professional, of course. And he would lash out and say, well, it's your problem. You're on a journey somewhere else, and go and see another priest. And unfortunately they would. And then they would get multiple exorcisms and multiple things, just trying to find the source of the problem. Yeah. So, interestingly, the doctors have to be a bit more professional. But every person I've spoken to who's regretted transition, so like Richie or whatever, they go back and it's just, oh yeah, but you're on a journey. So then we see all these statistics and it's like, oh, nobody regrets doing the surgery. Very few people, it's such a small percentage. And it's like, yeah, because if you go back, they'll just send you a letter, don't they? And just go, yeah, but you're on a journey, so don't worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And they still feel that way now, despite all of everything that's come to light. They still insist that all of that's the case. So I don't think anything's going to convince them, or nothing's going to allow them to change their minds, or give them that space and the way they perceive it in order to be able to change their mind and admit that they've done wrong.
Man.
Yeah, I suppose it's just kind of human psychology, I guess, just denial.
Yeah, if you have to admit, if you're a surgeon who's if potentially mutilated or just done things that they shouldn't have done to children, hundreds of them, thousands of them, and you then have to look yourself in the mirror and go, oh my God, what did I do?
Yeah.
I don't think a human being, I think that's almost impossible to do. It's almost impossible to come back from that. I think I would have to just tell myself, no, it's right, and keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't want to make excuses for them either, or make it sound like I'm giving them sympathy, but I do think that is a real thing that they're probably experiencing, in the sense that they just, even at the expense of those that have gone through it, they still can't admit it. So it is what it is.
I think I differ from a lot of other podcasters and things who talk about this subject, in that I don't really believe in evil. I don't think it's a thing. I think humans are always motivated to do what they think is right, and that's the real evil. If there is evil, that's what evil is. People trying to do the right thing. Obviously, some people are a bit selfish and self-motivated, and that they don't really see what they've done and why it's wrong.
Yeah.
But in any cult, Tom Cruise in Scientology, he's a true believer. I think he really believes in the stuff he's doing. It's ripping families apart, destroying lives. And if he were to now admit to himself in his 60s that while he's making fun Hollywood movies, he's ruining the lives of countless people, I don't think he could ever look himself in the mirror.
That's true.
Did you ever consider the bottom surgery?
I did, yeah. I considered leg lengthening. I was like...
Leg lengthening? I didn't even know about that.
Well, people in general do it. It's usually men of short stature that usually consider it.
Oh,
like
men
biological
do it?
men. Yeah. It's a thing.
How tall are you?
I'm 5'5".
Yeah. Which for a woman is slightly above average, I'd say. 5'4".
Average, yeah. But yeah, it definitely was affecting me at the time. It's like, I'm not... Again, in hindsight, it's like I still get read as a male now, so I honestly had nothing to worry about back then. But back then, I was like, no, people can tell. Like, so yeah, leg lengthening was something that crossed my mind, or facial masculinization as well, which again would have been completely overboard with everything else. But I was just, yeah,
What would that be, like a chin, bigger chin, or
yeah, bigger chin, stronger jaw or wider jaw, brow ridge and things like that. So, yeah, I think it was a fixation by that point of like, I was nitpicking everything. Nothing was ever, and I suppose that's a symptom of like body dysmorphia in general. It's just kind of like you're nitpicking at things and nothing's ever good enough. So
you would have had the skin graft from the wrist, is it, or the upper side of the wrist?
well, yeah, I did consider. So that's phalloplasty. I definitely did consider that, but by the time like I did a bit more research, I thought I was going to go forward with metoidioplasty, which is kind of, I suppose, dealing with what's already there. So they call it a release of the clitoris, which is more so just it's still quite brutal.
My. And is that do people tend to go with the wrist one? Because I imagine it wouldn't be that large if it's a release of the clitoris.
Yeah, I think it is. The reason. Yeah, I think it is the size why people don't go with that one.
But you can't have that your arm like that. Like, man, I just
it's brutal. Yeah, it is brutal, and just the fact that it wasn't part of your body, like it's just kind of like almost like, well, it is just something sewed onto you. It's not functional in any sense, and so that's what bothered me in the end. But so yeah, I was considering all these things, but fortunately, by the time I had the mastectomy, like I said, just kind of those doubts really started to hit home a bit.
Do you have difficulties now when you go into like women's changing rooms and things like that? Are you concerned people will think that you might be a man going into their changing rooms?
Oh yeah, and I get that for sure. Like I experienced that. It's only been up until it's only been recent that I've gone into women's facilities.
Otherwise, you go in men's.
Yeah, I
see.
Yeah, I for a long time, even after detransitioning, stopping testosterone, I was going into men's because I still there was no doubt that I was still getting read as a male.
And it's not the same issue, is it, with like men going into women's? I don't think people really mind if somebody like yourself who's actually a woman goes into the men's changing room. I don't think most of us really care very, it's not like
men don't care.
Yeah, like it's not a threat. You're not going to attack the men.
Yeah. I've heard the argument that, some men might feel embarrassed and that sort of thing. And so I completely respect that. I've not heard that before. I would definitely never go into a men's facility if I was with my friend and he went in there, and then it's like that. Then it gets a bit weird, I guess. But yeah, going in general it was never a problem. I suppose it wouldn't be because they wouldn't know. Yeah, they wouldn't know. But I suppose that's not the point, is it? But
what have women said to you in the women's change room?
Well, I get a lot of looks now, but in the past I've been told to like for example, a bouncer might say, "Hey, no, you need to." Or recently, so I went into the men's. It's like, this is a long queue. Like I don't want to deal with the looks and all that. Let me just go into the men's. And I was chased after by this female bouncer, and she was like, "Oh," and then I turned around and said, and then she was like, "Oh, no, okay." So it's like, I don't know, maybe from behind I look like a woman, and then when they see my face, like it's just this mad confusion. So I've kind of, depending on the situation, if I know that I'm going to cause a ruckus in some way, then I'll try to use the men's. But for the most part, I'm trying to gradually use the women's facilities because that's where I belong. And at the end of the day, it's not really my business if it upsets someone else, because I know that I am a woman and I'm not here. I'm just here to pee, and I'm not here to cause any harm. I just noticed that I just said something that a lot of trans people say, but I am genuinely just there to pee. So,
but you actually are a woman.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's and that is an issue.
I'm taking all these terms back, all these phrases back.
You're claiming them back.
Yeah, I'm claiming them back.
That is an issue, by the way. That some people on the sort of against the trans rights activist side, sometimes when they go too far, there's a lot of labeling women who look like men as men, and suggesting they might be trans. I know Candace Owens did that about the wife of what's his name, the French Prime Minister. I can't think of President.
Macron.
Macron's wife. Yeah, she was going on about Macron's wife. People have done it about Obama's wife.
Oh yes,
and I don't want to do a Streisand effect of sort of, people hadn't thought of that and now they have. But those were such huge videos. Those are such huge things online that they've already been said. Serena Williams is often told that as well. That's just horrific. It's just a horrific thing to be shouting. And that's why it was so delicate, I suppose, with Imane Khelif, who I believe is actually a man.
Yes.
But we had to be careful, I think.
Yeah.
And I said, at first let's just wait and see. And people were so quick to jump, and they were right. But, next time they might be wrong, and we have to be really careful.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, they use that argument of, butch lesbians get stopped in the women's. And I'm like, yeah, I know that, because when I was a teenager, I would get stopped in the women's still. So I don't know what to say. I mean, it's the point is, if you're a woman, then you should be able to use the women's facilities and vice versa. So I mean, it's simple, but I get that it's also not simple in some instances where you are perceived in a different way, and it's definitely complicated in my situation, but I try not to see it that way. Like, try to make an effort not to see it as complicated as I'm a woman. Yes, I know people are going to look at me, I might get stopped, but if I just kind of make it known that, or I might be on my period that day, it's just like, I need to use this facility because I can't do that in the men's. So I don't know. Yeah, I try not to let it stress me too much.
How are you are you able to have relationships at the moment? Are you able to find people and things?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit of I try to stay away from dating, or I have at the moment, because there's just so much going on, and the dates that I have had have just kind of crashed and burned very quickly. And I think that's because there's just a lot of things that I need to resolve, and whether that's related to the transition or not, I think it's mostly not, to be honest. And that's more to do with, I don't know, my upbringing and dealing with those sort of core feelings that have kind of come from that. I just trying to learn and make sure that things aren't getting in the way of relationships.
Dealing with the root issues that you weren't able to do in the teenagers because of the whole trans distraction.
Exactly, yeah.
Man. Elon Musk has said that his son died. Did you see that? It's like, my son is dead.
I've seen that.
What do you make of that from transitioning? Is he right? Is that an exaggeration?
I completely understand where he's coming from with that, and I think you probably would see it in that way if you're a parent. Because I think a lot of people, when they go through transition, it is a process of like, let me erase that previous part of me, or that's a different person. Let me just erase that whole part of my life, and this is my new identity now. So it is a death in a way. But then I know that the trans community will often, they love that idea of like, oh, this is my dead name, and that part of me's dead, and that sort of thing. So I don't know. It's I completely empathize with Elon Musk in that situation. But in a lot of ways, it is a death.
I suppose he's also lost his son to an ideology. So it's not just the transing, it's probably every time Elon tries to have a conversation with him, it's like, you're a transphobe and all this stuff.
Yeah, essentially like losing them to a cult, and then that can change your mind in ways that you might not even realize, and you become a different person, and it's all about that. And it is a bit concerning, but I think it happens to a lot of people.
What would you say to the celebrities like David Tennant, Jamie Lee Curtis, who've made a whole song and dance and made a fashion out of trans?
I think they don't really know what they're talking about, and they don't understand the harms that are actually happening. I'm sure they've been told by whoever's around them, their handlers or whatever, this is what you need to say. and it's very showy. It's not real. Nothing about it is real from what I've seen. I know in David Tennant's case, I believe his child is trans or something.
Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis as well. Charlize Theron, quite a few of them. Lots of trans kids in celebrity land.
Yeah, I would question what's going on there. Like, 'cause I mean, all of the negative elements of celebrity, and there's a lot of narcissism and that sort of thing in that world, I think, oftentimes, especially when you're at, a higher level. And so, learning about Munchausen's by proxy and that sort of thing, it does concern me, like what's happening with those kids. Like, I think a lot of times, or like Angelina Jolie, like I think maybe it was a couple of her kids or something that decided to, I could be getting that wrong, but
she adopted a lot when that was popular, adopting a lot of kids from African countries, East Asia. And stuff.
Yeah. So I think sometimes, I think that Munchausen's by proxy is happening a lot more than we realize, and especially when you're that young, it's like how are you trans? Like I don't agree with trans children. I don't think that's a thing. You can't be trans. I see trans as a process anyway. It's not really who you are. But yeah, it's not a real thing.
If you could click your fingers now and you'd have your original voice back without the facial hair, you wouldn't have had the mastectomy. Would you do that?
Yeah, well, it's but then that would be erasing everything else that's happened, surely. But I suppose in a sense of, I feel like that would affect, I couldn't do that without it affecting other elements of my life and things that I have things that I've learned and things that I have kind of nourished within myself. I feel like I couldn't do that without erasing other parts of me. So in that sense, no. But do I wish that it didn't happen? Yeah, sure. Like if I could, like, I don't know, redo things in a way, potentially. But I don't know. I feel like it's too intertwined with everything else to be able to say that, yeah, sure, just get rid of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a really nuanced, interesting answer, actually. That's who you've become, you, and you are you.
Exactly.
So you don't want to not be you anymore.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. No, but I think everybody always wants to sort of be them, what they are. They can't imagine changing. And
yeah.
That's interesting. I've got one more question for you, but where can people find your socials and,
I'm on Twitter, KLB Fax, FAX. I think that's about it, really, as far as me wanting to speak about these topics. That's where you can find me.
We'll put a link below to your Twitter, and tell me, who is a heretic you admire?
I'm going to go a bit left field and say Graham Hancock, because he's been trying to expose kind of archaeological inconsistencies and anomalies at least since the early 90s, and he's been considered a kook and a conspiracy theorist, he's out there trying to ask the deeper question of where we come from, like what our origins are as humans. So I think he's doing some great work.
That's really interesting. So Graham Hancock's, he's been on Rogan a few times, Joe Rogan,
yes.
And one of my best friends is a big fan. He's really into it, and he's always saying to me, like, we were here before and it's been covered and all this stuff. I don't know enough about it, but it's certainly interesting to think about, isn't it? The idea that like everything just got reduced to rubble and we started again, and there's no historic evidence of it, and how interesting that there might have been someone else. And I mean, the Earth's however many millions of years old. So I think it's interesting to look at. I don't know enough, in case people are angry, shouting at their screens saying he's a kook, as you say he's been. So I don't know enough.
Well, he's on Netflix now, so I suppose he's been accepted to a certain degree somehow. But
I need to watch his stuff then. My friend is always sending me like links to look at this, it's facts, and I was like, I don't know, man. I'll look at it later.
It's safe for people if it's on Netflix, and you're not like in the deep depths of YouTube.
Although there's lots of trans ideology stuff on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
So that's
true. That is true. Yeah.
People, please do go follow Keira on X. I'll put the link below. Keep watching his channel and hit that like button. So that's where watch the stuff and hit the like button.